Ireland's greatest hero had a secret weapon that terrified his enemies. But when the battle ended, his own people had to strip naked and throw him into exploding vats of water to stop him from slaughtering everyone he loved. Cú Chulainn is Ireland's greatest legendary hero. 17 years old, demigod son of the deity Lugh, defended his entire homeland alone against an invading army. But here's what makes him different from every other mythological warrior you know. When Cú Chulainn enters his battle rage, called the Ríastrad or Warp Spasm, his body literally turns inside out. We're not talking metaphorically angry. The medieval Irish texts describe in graphic anatomical detail how his feet and shins switch to the rear of his legs, how his internal organs flap outside his mouth, how one eye sinks so deep into his skull that a crane couldn't reach it, while the other bulges out onto his cheek. This isn't a hero getting a power boost, this is body horror, and it's written into Ireland's national epic like a biological event. The question isn't just what the Ríastrad is, it's why Irish storytellers needed their greatest hero to become an unrecognizable monster to save his people.
Because the grotesque details get worse. And they're so specific, they appear consistently across multiple manuscript translations spanning centuries. The Ríastrad doesn't start with a roar, it starts with a seizure. The texts say, his shanks and his joints, every knuckle and angle and organ from head to foot shook like a tree in the flood. There's a furious twist inside his skin. His entire musculature breaks free from its natural alignment. Then the external horror begins. His feet and heels literally rotate backward. The sinews in his calves ball up on the front of his shins, each knot described as the size of a warrior's bunched fist. On his head, the temple sinews stretch to his neck, forming lumps as big as the head of a month-old child. But the face is where it gets truly nightmarish. One eye gets sucked so deep into his skull that it disappears into the depths of his head. The other eye falls out onto his cheek. His mouth tears open so wide that his gullet becomes visible. His lungs and liver flap in his mouth and throat. His jaws clamp together with enough force for a lion-killing blow. From his throat, fiery flakes, large as a ram's fleece, reach his mouth. His body generates so much heat that snow melts 30 feet around him. And from the top of his skull erupts a fountain of dark blood, rising as high as the mast of a tall ship before dissolving into mist.
Even his hair becomes weaponized. It twists like the tangle of a red thorn bush, each strand standing on end like a spike. The text claims if you shook an apple tree over his head, each apple would be impaled on a bristle of his hair. Some versions add that a drop of blood appears on the tip of every single strand. But there's one detail that separates this from pure monstrosity. The lone layeth, the hero light, a great radiant beam that shines from his forehead during the transformation, described as long and thick as a hero's fist, projecting from his brow like a beacon. This is his divine inheritance made visible. His father Lugh was a god associated with light and kingship. The lone layeth is proof that the source of Cú Chulainn's power isn't training or willpower. It's his blood. It's the god within him, erupting outward. Here's the paradox. Light usually symbolizes order, reason, divinity. But the lone layeth only shines when Cú Chulainn is at his most monstrous and uncontrollable. The divine power that should represent order becomes the marker of total chaos. So what causes this transformation? The Ríastrad isn't something Cú Chulainn can control or summon tactically. It's involuntary. And it's triggered by 3 specific things.
First, overwhelming physical threat.
The first time it happens, he's 5 years old. He shows up at the king's court, doesn't know the customs, and 150 boys attack him at once. That threat triggers his first warp spasm. He defeats them all. Second, extreme emotional trauma. This is the most potent catalyst. During the time, Cú Chulainn is healed by his father and sleeps for 3 days. When he wakes, he discovers the boy troop of Ulster, who came to help him, has been slaughtered by the enemy army. The sight of their corpses triggers what the texts describe as his most vicious Ríastrad ever. The frenzy isn't just anger, it's grief twisted into a physical mutation. His body becomes the manifestation of unbearable psychic pain. Third, prolonged, desperate combat. In his 3-day duel with his foster brother Ferdiad, Cú Chulainn is pushed to absolute exhaustion. Only on the 3rd day, facing defeat, does the hero light begin to shine and the warp spasm seize him. Each trigger reveals something important. The Ríastrad is a trauma response. It's not a controlled technique. It's what happens when Cú Chulainn's mind or body is pushed past the breaking point.
And here's why the Ríastrad is terrifying for his own people. When Cú Chulainn transforms, he can't tell friend from enemy. He becomes an indiscriminate killing machine. The texts are explicit about this. He's a threat to everyone. And in early Irish society, accidentally killing your own kin, Fingal, was one of the most dishonourable acts possible. So the Ulstermen developed a ritual to bring him back. When they see him returning from battle in the Ríastrad, King Concobar gives the order, "Bring on the naked women." A group of women from the court go out and bare their breasts in front of him. The young, beardless hero is overcome with shame. He averts his gaze, buries his face in his chariot, and while he's distracted, the warriors grab him and plunge him into 3 vats of cold water. The first vat explodes, its staves shatter from the heat of his body. The second vat boils over. Only the 3rd vat manages to cool him to a normal temperature. This ritual does 2 things. It reimposes social norms to break his psychological state, and it uses collective action to physically quench his fury. It's a necessary procedure for managing a weapon that constantly threatens to destroy the society it's supposed to protect. Because that's what Cú Chulainn is in the Ríastrad, a weapon, not a warrior. And like any weapon, he has to be handled carefully by the people who wield him.
The true cost of the Ríastrad becomes clear in Cú Chulainn's most famous duel. Ferdiad was his foster brother. They trained together under the warrior woman Scatach. They shared the same bed, fought side by side, loved each other like brothers. But during the Tain, Queen Meb manipulates Ferdiad into fighting Cú Chulainn. She gets him drunk, promises him wealth and her daughter's hand, and attacks his honor by suggesting Cú Chulainn thinks he's a coward. Ferdiad agrees, and Cú Chulainn is heartbroken. The texts say killing Ferdiad would be like piercing his own heart. For 3 days they fight with perfect honor. They're evenly matched. Each night they cease combat, embrace, exchange kisses, and send healing herbs to each other across the battlefield. This is fí fair, the warrior's code of honorable combat. But on the 3rd day, Cú Chulainn is wounded and exhausted, and the Ríastrad takes him. The hero light erupts from his brow. His body contorts into a monster before Ferdiad's eyes. And in that transformed state, Cú Chulainn calls for his secret weapon, the Gai Bolga, a barbed spear that enters as 1 point, but opens into 30 barbs inside the body. He kills his brother. The moment the Ríastrad appears, the duel stops being about honor. It becomes about survival. Cú Chulainn doesn't win as a skilled warrior. He wins as a monster, using an inescapable weapon. And afterward, he's consumed by grief. He carries Ferdiad's body across the ford and delivers a long lament, cursing the queen who forced this tragedy. This is the paradox of Cú Chulainn's power. It guarantees his victory and his damnation simultaneously. He saves Ulster, but he destroys what he loves. The Ríastrad makes him the hero his people need, and the monster he never wanted to be.
So why did Irish storytellers create this grotesque transformation for their greatest hero? Because the Ríastrad solves a narrative problem. The Tain's premise is that the men of Ulster are cursed, periodically incapacitated by the pains of childbirth. One teenage boy has to defend the entire province against 4 armies. That's impossible unless he's more than human. The Ríastrad is the answer. It's the narrative mechanism that makes Cú Chulainn believable as a one-man army. But it's also a sophisticated exploration of power. The texts understand that the perfect warrior is, by definition, an uncontrollable threat. The same force that protects society can annihilate it. Cú Chulainn exists on the boundary, Ulster's greatest protector and its most dangerous liability. And when modern Irish nationalists tried to use him as a symbol, they had to sanitize this. Statues and artwork depict him as a noble, classical hero. They erase the grotesque body horror, the uncontrollable violence, the killing of his own brother. Because a national hero who becomes a monster doesn't fit the narrative of respectable patriotism. The Ríastrad was too chaotic, too honest about what violence actually does to a person. The Ríastrad isn't just Irish mythology's version of a berserker rage. It's a complete physical and moral deconstruction of the hero archetype itself. Cú Chulainn is a hero defined by his fury, and his greatest triumphs are inseparable from his deepest horror.